pleased to welcome Amol Sinha, who is Executive Director, ACLU of New Jersey. That's the American Civil Liberties Union of New Jersey. Good to see you, Amol.
Good to be here.
Let's talk about a bunch of issues that matter to you. By the way, ACLU is all about what?
Well, the ACLU is a nationwide civil rights and liberties organization. We're here in New Jersey for 60 years, and we defend and promote everybody's constitutional rights in the state.
Let's talk about some of the top issues. Number one, legalization of recreational marijuana is a civil liberties union for what? Civil liberties issue?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
So for us, legalization is a racial justice issue. If you're black in New Jersey, you're 3 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession than if you're white. And the reality is that every single year since the year 2000, we've been increasing the number of marijuana arrests, and the disproportionality has maintained. So in 2013, we had 27,000 arrests. In 2017, we had 37,000 marijuana-related arrests in our state, even though we have a statewide conversation about legalization. And everybody believes that, regardless of where you fall on the issue, everybody believes that nobody should be saddled with the lifelong collateral consequences of a marijuana conviction.
But so here's the thing. We just had a conversation with Senator Ron Rice, who said he's against the legalization of recreational marijuana, but absolutely for the decriminalization of marijuana. You say?
Well, where Senator Rice and I agree is that nobody should be saddled with these criminal justice consequences. He believes that people
He believes it's an issue of race. So do you.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
But you don't agree with decriminalization.
That's right.
Because?
So I think decriminalization isn't the half measure that people think it is. I think full legalization is really going to undo the harms that the war on drugs have wrought in New Jersey. So that includes creating an industry that's diverse, providing opportunities for people who have criminal justice histories, creating economic opportunities for those communities that have been the hardest hit by the war on drugs. Those are things that full legalization can bring to the table that decriminalization doesn't.
What's dark money?
Dark money.
Why does it matter?
So the bill that we're talking about is the donor disclosure bill.
Is that actually, by the way, we're taping on the 18th of June, we'll be seeing later. There's a bill being voted on today. We don't know what's going to happen.
That's right.
What should happen and what is it?
So the bill that's being considered would require any organization that's a 501c4 by the federal tax code.
We are a 501c3, which means we cannot be involved in advocating any political position.
Well, you can to a certain degree of your budget, but not explicitly. It may not be something that NJTV wants to do.
Okay.
However, 501c4s can engage in some political work.
That's a tax status,
yes.
a tax code, if you will.
But it includes organizations that are nonprofits, like the ACLU, like LGBT rights organizations, like abortion
directly
advocacy
involved
groups,
in political process.
to some degree.
And what's the dark money thing?
So I think the intent of the dark money bill is to get at those influencers of electoral politics, the people that are funding candidates that are going to govern us eventually, that people want to know and have a reasonable degree of expectation to know who is funding those candidates and how they may be influenced.
So like on our program, we can see who funds us. We put those names up.
Yeah.
We don't know who's funding these other things.
So, but what I think is problematic about the bill is that it's overbroad. Any organization that's organized like a C4 that does any sort of public statements on any issue that may be legislation at some point in the future is going to be triggered to have to disclose their donors.
Too broad?
It's too broad. And for an organization like the ACLU, we voluntarily disclose many of our donors in our annual report. However, for us to be required to give up donors that may have legitimate privacy concerns. We've seen in the past how donors have been targeted because they've given to organizations like Planned Parenthood, like NAACP. The ACLU is a controversial organization, and so are many of these other organizations. But this is a matter of constitutional principles as well. It creates serious First Amendment concerns. People have a right to give to organizations privately, and it has serious privacy implications as well. People have the right to make sure that they are anonymous when they do give.
We're going to find out what happens with that legislation and follow up on this program. Solitary confinement, you're very much against it. You want to ban it.
Yes.
Because?
Well, by international standards, prolonged isolation of anything more than 15 days is considered torture. However, in the United States, we are routinely keeping people incarcerated in solitary confinement for years on end. and that happens in New Jersey. Now, a couple of years ago, we had a bill that restricted the use of solitary confinement that was passed through the legislature, but Governor Christie vetoed it because he said solitary confinement doesn't exist in New Jersey.
It does.
It does, and we just call it something else. And so we don't want the government to not be held accountable simply because they change names on us. The idea behind the bill that we're supporting is to limit solitary confinement to only the most necessary cases. We don't want vulnerable people, people who are young, people who are overly elderly, people who have mental or physical disabilities to be subjected to the trauma of solitary confinement unnecessarily. The sponsor on the Senate side is Senator Poe, and on the Assembly side, Nellie Poe, and on the Assembly side, it's Assemblywoman Pinkin.
Got it. Question. Ex-offenders, their rights.
Yeah.
You believe ex-offenders should be able to vote in elections?
That's right.
Devil's advocate, you say what to those who say, come on,
yeah,
you did this crime, you're put away for it, you lose certain rights, that's why you can't vote, you say?
Well, I understand that logic. However, we have to think about why it is that we deny people the right to vote to begin with if they have a criminal history. There's no real tangible connection between committing a crime or not committing a crime and voting, right? And states like Maine and Vermont allow everybody to vote. Nobody ever loses the right to vote. And I think we can follow the same path in New Jersey. And in New Jersey, we're dead last in terms of racial disparities in our prisons. You're 12 times more likely to be incarcerated if you're black than if you're white in New Jersey. And that means out of 50 states, we have the worst racial disparities. The worst. And so that means that in New Jersey, we're systemically denying the right to vote to people of color, and that should shock all of our collective conscience.
This is Amol Sinha. Sinha, excuse me, I apologize.
Okay.
Executive Director, ACLU, that is American Civil Liberties Union in New Jersey. Important conversation. Make sure you come back and we continue talking about a whole range of other issues involving our civil liberties, which affects all of us. Thanks so much.
I'd love to be back.
Well
Thank
done.
you.
I'm Steve Adubato. This is State of Affairs. Let's continue the conversation. So follow me on Twitter at Steve Adubato, and way more importantly, we'll see you next week.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 30 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of State of Affairs with Steve Adubato has been provided by New Jersey Sharing Network, Johnson & Johnson, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, Keystone Mountain Lakes Regional Council of Carpenters, Suez, Wells Fargo, and by University Hospital, Newark, New Jersey. Promotional support provided by NJ Advance Media and by AM 970 The Answer.